Hi, welcome to Dream and Do. Suppose I told you that the greatest mind in history found something so appalling about human nature that he believed it must never be spoken. Carl Jung is the great Swiss psychiatrist who explored the uncharted depths of the unconscious mind. But he chanced upon a discovery so real, so cringe, worthy that it will completely shift your way of looking at the people around you. This isn't another one of those feel-good self-help ideas. Jung called it the shadow truth of humanity, a psychological reality so piercing and unforgiving that once you grasp it, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. And this is the sobering part. The very people who say they love you, stand for you, and fight for you are most often the same people who will forget your kindness within a few days, but hold on to your mistakes forever. So, are you ready to shed the mask that every human being wears? Because once you catch a glimpse of what Jung discovered, there is no going back from decades of studying the human mind. Jung discovered something that he called the gratitude paradox, a mental trap that reveals the ugliest part of the way our minds actually work. Just think of it. You devote weeks, perhaps months, to being there for a friend during their hour of need. You ultimately sacrifice your time, your energy, your resources. You are their lifeline when they're sinking in despair. And then just a few weeks into the post-crisis, everything as normal again, period. It is like none of that ever occurred. Take a moment to think about it. Think of your life. Can you recall each act of kindness someone performed for you last month? Last year, if you are truthful, the response will unsettle you. Jung revealed that the human mind is plagued by what he called benefit amnesia, an automatic defense mechanism that results in us forgetting good things much faster than we forget bad things. But why? Because showing kindness incurs an invisible debt, and humans are highly averse to receiving favors. So the unconscious plays one hell of a trick. It leaves the memory of favors in your head only as holes, as hollows. But it keeps every slight, each wound, each rebuke, that birthday surprise you spent weeks planning, gone throws late. Night phone calls when they needed you most, wiped out. But the time you lost it in the heat of the moment, that experience is etched into their mind in high definition, replayed repeatedly. As Jung eloquently captured, the human mind is a museum of grievances and a graveyard of kindnesses. And yet this was only not the most disturbing discovery Jung made. After analyzing thousands of patients, he uncovered what he privately called the universal deception, the uncomfortable truth that every single person, no matter how genuine they appear, is guided by hidden motives. That sweet elderly neighbor who always waves at you. She's unconsciously weighing whether you'd help carry her groceries or call the police if things get noisy. That supportive friend who always seems to be rooting for you. They're actually privately calculating just how much your success threatens their own sense of self. This is not manipulation. This is worse. It is an unconscious influence that runs in the background, and with Jung, our shadow self calculates everything that happens, even our genuinest connections. The mind is quietly computing, how is this good for me? What am I going to benefit from this relationship? How do I maintain my place in this relationship? Even the mother who appears forever selfless to a certain degree is driven by survival needs and unconscious desires. That selfless giving mom, she is unwittingly scripting you for loyalty down the road, so that when age has taken its toll on her, you feel duty, bound to look out for her. The buddy who knows all the ins and outs of your life, they're not being nice. They're systematically accruing emotional capital for the time when they need your favor. And here is where it gets spooky. You do this too. And right now, as you read these words, your unconscious mind is already doing the math on how this information can work for you, how it can shift the balance of your own relationships into your favor. Carl Jung called this inevitable shadow dance. We're all doing it, all of us. We unconsciously use each other while making sure we're doing so altruistically. But Jung's research went deeper. He found something worse still, a basic pattern that explains why trust so often fails. He called it conditional loyalty. Think about it. That love that vowed to love you forever. Jung's case studies revealed that passion has an expiration date, and it has nothing to do with how you fit their needs at the moment. That family member, faithfully friend on the unconscious level, They're calculating all the time whether having you around raises or lowers their social status. In Jung's opinion, human relationships aren't the rigid, impenetrable things we'd like to believe they are. They're fragile deals, maintained intact only, as long as both sides continue getting something from it. He discovered that every relationship has secret scorecards, unconscious books of give and take, gain and loss. And the moment the balance is upset, the relationship begins to unravel. Lose your job, get ill, less useful. Observe how rapidly the phone fails to ring. Jung documented this repeatedly. The friends who vanish when you can no longer provide validation or openings. The coworker who becomes aloof when you walk by. The lover whose love vanishes as soon as there is a better one along. As Jung explained, their attachment was never really about you. It was about making them comfortable. Love, in most cases, is simply the feeling that people have when their wants are optimally satisfied. And this leads to what Jung believed was his saddest discovery, the mirage of loyalty, the terrible realization that total commitment, the kind that endures through loss, illness, and defeat, not only occurs rarely, but may be psychologically impossible for human beings. Jung devised what he called in confidence the test of loyalty. Reflect on this question. How many people are in your life who would stand by you if you were left with nothing? If your wealth disappeared, your status was lost, your health failed, and you had nothing to give. His conclusion was chilling. For most of us, the response is zero. Not that they are evil human beings, but because true loyalty involves a level of psychological maturity that few of us ever reach. Much of what we call loyalty, Jung thought, is simply useful attachment. Individuals remain together as long as the relationship meets their emotional, social, or practical requirements. But take those benefits away, and loyalty vanishes like fog. As Jung once put it, we mistake temporary alignments for permanent bonds, and then feel betrayed when people reveal their true nature. The ugly truth: when things change and people distance themselves, they're not abandoning you. They're reverting to the natural state of human nature: survival. Think about your workplace for a moment. Those coworkers who seem like your friends. Have you seen them at the time of layoffs, when loyalty might cost them their own chances? Jung would say, until that day comes, you don't know where their loyalty is. That boss who treats you like family. You've never seen what happens when you're no longer useful to their goals. Jung found that true loyalty requires something most people simply don't possess: the ability to act against self-interest out of principle. But here's what makes his insight even more disturbing. This entire system runs in darkness. Most people aren't even aware of their hidden agendas, their selective memory of kindness, or their conditional loyalty. The person who forgets your generosity yet clings to your mistakes isn't consciously choosing to be unfair. According to Jung, they literally cannot see it. Their shadow self, the side of the psyche they refuse to acknowledge, is pulling the strings, while their conscious mind tells them a completely different story. This is why confronting someone about these behaviors so often feels futile. You're asking them to recognize patterns their very psychology is designed to keep hidden. Jung called this the nobility narrative, the unconscious story we tell ourselves to preserve the illusion of our own goodness, even while acting in ways we condemn in others. The friend who abandons you in crisis tells themselves they're protecting their energy. The colleague who sabotages your promotion convinces themselves they're just being strategic. The family member who only calls when they need something. In their mind, they're connecting. And here's the part that stings the most. Once we see these patterns in others, we're forced to admit they live in us as well. That uneasy feeling rising in your chest right now. It's recognition. The truth that you too have forgotten someone's kindness, calculated your loyalty, or justified your own hidden agenda. According to Jung, true psychological maturity begins the moment we stop pretending we're exempt from these universal human patterns. So why do these patterns exist at all? Jung's analysis revealed something startling. What we call character flaws are actually survival mechanisms passed down from our ancestors. Forgetting kindness prevents us from being exploited by manipulative gratitude. Remembering slights and betrayals keeps us vigilant against future threats. Hidden agendas help us secure an advantage in uncertain environments. Conditional loyalty made sense in a world where resources were scarce and trust had to be strategic. The problem, Jung realized, is that we're running ancient software in a modern world. Or psychology was designed for tribes fighting to survive, not for a civilization that preaches unconditional love and eternal loyalty. This clash creates what Jung called the authenticity crisis. We're trapped, unable to be purely selfless, yet unable to admit that we're naturally calculating. And so, what was Carl Jung's ultimate secret? The truth, he said, was almost too heavy to reveal. After decades of studying the human soul, he concluded that authentic human connection is possible, but only when we embrace the shadow truth. We must stop pretending people are nobler than they are. We must love them as they truly exist, unconsciously self-interested, conditionally loyal, and hardwired for survival above all else. Here lies the paradox. When we let go of our illusions, we can finally appreciate the rare moments when someone chooses generosity, despite their nature. When we recognize that loyalty is fragile and rare, we treasure it when it proves genuine. This doesn't make us cynical, it makes us realistic. And as Jung discovered, reality is the only foundation on which genuine love can be built. Jung's ideas not only restructured psychology, they transformed the way we see human behavior. And once you really get this stuff, it all changes. You'll stop being crushed when people forget your kindness, because you'll recognize the psychological mechanism at work. You'll spot hidden agendas without taking them personally, because you'll understand their universal human programming. You'll prepare for conditional loyalty without bitterness, because you'll see it for what it is. The natural way most people operate. Carl Jung spent the last few decades of his life with this shadow awareness, and it changed how he engaged in every relationship. He continued to love deeply. He continued to give generously. He continued to expect loyalty, but he did so with open eyes. In his private journals, Jung confessed something remarkable. Once you notice these patterns, you acquire tremendous power. You bestow generosity without seeking return, so your largesse is actually selfless. You sense agendas without being manipulative in turn. You invest in relationships while planning for their natural course. And you request loyalty, not as a right, but as a special and precious privilege. This isn't about getting hard or unfeeling. It is about becoming wise. Jung found that the people who get these shadow truths are actually more compassionate, not less, because they quit judging people by impossible expectations. And here is the most gorgeous irony of human psychology. When we quit expecting perfection, we can finally love people for who they are. When we expect nothing, we start to appreciate everything. When we accept the shadow, we finally witness the light. So why warned Jung that this information must go to the grave? Because it brings huge power over those who remain in illusion. With it, you could control those who expect constant gratitude for short-term kindness. You could take advantage of those who believe in the illusion of unconditional loyalty. You could manipulate those who believe everybody's intentions are pure. Jung was afraid this shadow learning would free or spoil, all depending on the awareness of the person possessing it. That is the true test. Will you utilize it to become more truly human, or more cunning predatory? His warning wasn't a warning of secrecy. It was a warning of responsibility. To penetrate the masks other people wear takes psychological maturity, the capacity for holding the truth without allowing it to annihilate your compassion. At the end of his life, Jung labored to combine this shadow knowledge with what he termed individuated consciousness, the elusive state of seeing clearly and still loving deeply. In Jung's view, being aware of these truths concerning human nature is just the tip of the iceberg. The true work is learning to live in love and kindness with realistic expectations, which means giving without attachment to results, loving without insisting on permanence, trusting while anticipating disappointment, hoping while still acknowledging reality. And this, Jung thought, is the real test of integration, not whether you become cynical, but whether you can stay loving and look at people exactly as they are. Can you offer kindness knowing it will be forgotten? Can you form relationships knowing they might be conditional? Can you be faithful, knowing fidelity might not be returned? In the last chapter of his remarkable life, Carl Jung breathed a secret so profound that he felt it should only be spoken in the holiest of places. It wasn't related to the unconscious, though he was the one who opened it up. It wasn't related to archetypes or the collective unconscious, though he coined them. It was something deeper, something much more threatening to our delusions. Jung's final insight was at once disarmingly simple and utterly revolutionary. Human beings are not good or bad. They are human. For most of history, we've divided people into tidy categories: the good and the evil, the heroes and the villains, the saints and the sinners. We've built religions, laws, and entire civilizations on the assumption that some souls are inherently virtuous, while others are irredeemably corrupt. But after all those years of sitting across from humanity's darkest secrets and greatest moments of beauty, Jung dispelled these illusions. He found that each human being, without exception, contains the full range of human potential. The ability to act in awe-inspiring generosity and horrific cruelty, the potential for deep wisdom and appalling foolishness, the ability to love with poetic beauty and hurt with surgeon skill. This was not ivory tower theory to Jung. It came from listening to thousands of hours of secrets that would cause criminals to cry, and seeing acts of kindness so unadulterated they reduce saints to humility. He witnessed highly respected community leaders have darker than nightmares thoughts, and social misfits display brighter than the sunlight hearts. Jung's shadow was never a theoretical concept. It was his lived awareness that each of us is made up of many things. The kindest person you've ever met has moments of shocking selfishness. The most truthful person you've ever known has lied for their own advantage. The most loving parent has felt flashes of resentment at their own child. And here is where Jung's revelation becomes fully radical. This is not a defect of human nature. It is the blueprint. The shadow is not something to be cleansed or eradicated. It is something to be recognized, integrated, and embraced as a part of what makes us wonderfully and pathetically human. The individual who refuses to acknowledge their ability for cruelty is more sinister than the individual who accepts it and exercises restraint. The one who believes they cannot be selfish will act selfishly, but imagine themselves noble. And the individual who believes they are above deception, they will deceive themselves so utterly that they lose all touch with reality. All of our relationship heartbreak isn't caused by what people do. It is caused by the clash between who people are and who we insist they must be. We fall in love with possibility, we become friends with projections, we believe fantasies, and then, when reality inevitably breaks in, we feel betrayed. Jung learned that this never-ending cycle of anticipation and disillusionment is the real obstacle to genuine relating. Because when we're loving someone for who we wish they were, we're not loving them at all. We're just loving our own idea. The wife who demands that her husband be tough all the time will fall apart when he gets vulnerable. The friend who requires everything to be positive will be abandoned when depression sets in. The parent that insists that their child realize their unrealized dreams will perceive independence as rejection. But Jung had a revolutionary alternative. What if we loved human beings not despite their contradictions, but precisely because of their wholeness? What if deep connection wasn't about shaping others into our ideals, but about embracing them as the wonderfully flawed, appallingly complex persons they really are? And here is perhaps the toughest truth of all. Even our finest impulses tend to have secret motives. The generous person may be buying approval secretly. The person who always rushes to help others might actually be running from her own problems. The person who never asks for anything may simply be guarding a perception of moral superiority. But the thing is, this does not disqualify generosity. It does not make compassion irrelevant. It makes us human. Jung understood our motives are rarely pure. Our actions have multiple ends, and our hearts hold a tangled mixture of selflessness and self-interest we barely understand ourselves. And yet, individuals tormented themselves, asking whether they were really being altruistic or really selfish in their motives, as if the presence of self-interest somehow invalidated the fact of their generosity. But that is the flaw of either failure. Jung discovered a far deeper truth: we can be both. Our concern for others can be real, even as it works in our self-interest. Our love can be real, even if it does comfort us. Our aid can benefit, even as it makes us feel good. The freedom that Jung found wasn't about looking for perfect people to love. It was about being able to love actual people in all their imperfection. This kind of love isn't about consistency, perfection, or having our every whim fulfilled. It doesn't place the other person into a rigid fantasy role. It simply sees, accepts, and loves the entire messy, contradictory reality of who they are. And yes, this is the hardest kind of love, because it requires us to leave behind our chosen illusions. It means loving your husband despite knowing that he will be selfish sometimes. It means standing by your friend despite seeing the potential for lack of thoughtfulness. It means loving your loved ones while fully expecting that they will fail you, get on your nerves, and disappoint you sometimes. But here is the irony. This realism and hardness of heart is at the same time the greatest love. It can't be shattered by disappointment, since it never counted on fantasy. It can't be shattered by betrayal, since it was built upon an expectation that betrayal is always going to be an option, and it can't be unraveled by human error, since it begins with an acknowledgement of human limitation. When we finally realize that human beings are human, imperfect, unpredictable, incapable of meeting all of our own needs, we are free. Free to give without reciprocity. Free to love without claiming control. Free to offer generosity as an expression of our own fullness, not in exchange for return. The one who serves others without seeking service in return finds a new kind of happiness. The one who loves without requiring love finds a richer satisfaction. The giver who ceases to keep accounts finds a tranquility no transaction can ever bring. And let's be real. This is not about being a doormat or tolerating abuse. It is about giving from choice, not coercion, from acceptance, not delusion, from wholeness, not lack. For when we release our pattern of relating to who we'd like others to be and begin relating to who they are, something wonderful occurs. We meet them where they are, in reality, not fantasy. That means searching for the fear behind your partner's anger, the insecurity behind your friend's boasting, the love hidden behind your parents' disapproval. It means seeing that the person who hurt you was likely acting on their own hurt, that the person who failed you was struggling with limits you couldn't see, that the person who disappointed you could have been carrying burdens you never even realized you did. This form of connection is necessarily messier than fantasy, but also exponentially more real, for it is built not on projection, but on truth, not on illusion, but on acceptance, not on what we want the world to be, but on what is. And paradoxically enough, it is in this radical acceptance of human limitation that we most frequently find humanity's greatest capacity for transcendence. When finally you let go of illusions, you get to know human beings more profoundly and relate to them more authentically. Jung believed that this comprehension was something that one would carry to the grave, not with shame, but with reverence. Why sacred? Because once you see, you can't look away. It changes the way you look at people, at yourself, and at the knotted web of human relationships. And from this day forward, every encounter, every fight, every relationship carries with it an unwritten reminder. Human beings are not simply good or evil. They are utterly, painfully, wonderfully human. When you feel angry at one's selfishness, this truth whispers, you yourself have been selfish. When you feel let down by weakness, it reminds you of your own weak moments. When you feel hurt by thoughtlessness, it reminds you of the times you've been thoughtless yourself. And Jung insisted, this is not a burden, it is freedom. Because now you can really love people for who they are, not for who they should be. You can relate without the exhausting burden of trying to change them. You can give without the sneaky agenda of expecting something back. You can accept others without secretly hoping they will turn out to be your ideal. This kind of love, clear-eyed, illusion-free, is, according to Jung, the closest thing to genuine connection we'll ever find. It's love that sees limitation and loves anyway. It's connection that acknowledges flaws and connects despite them. It's acceptance that recognizes imperfection and embraces it, not in spite of it, but because of it. This isn't the fairy tale. Rom.com inspirational, motivational speech love. It is harder, messier, but so much more real. It is the love we discover when we finally stop searching for perfect humans and learn to love imperfect humans with real truth. And now keep it on the down low. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Will you let it make you cynical, expecting the worst because you know that people will at times disappoint you? Or will you let it make you more empathetic, looking at others for the same vulnerable, imperfect humanity you hold within yourself? Will you use this truth to justify your own shortcomings? Or will you let it lead to integrity in considering your motives and greater purpose in your choices? Jung's wisdom does not come with a manual. It comes with a sense of duty. The duty to nurture the truth of humanness. The duty to love more because you see more. To forgive more readily because you understand more. Let that truth transform not just how you see other people, but how you see yourself. Let it be the starting point, not for judgment, but for the type of love that could rebuild the world a connection at a time. Finally, perhaps Jung's most precious gift was this: the realization that our humanity and all its flaws, nuance, and contradictions is not something to be fixed or escaped. It is something to be claimed, and is within that claiming, unglamorized, imperfect, and authentic, that we achieve our greatest potential for true love, genuine connection, and lasting peace.